Spread the message, man. Spread it far and wide. You're more than matter. You're more than matter. And you've been searching. If you found your way to this podcast, you're a searcher. You're a seeker. You haven't been fooled by corporate capitalism and marketing ploys that are hell-bent on having you consume and forcing you to produce. If you found your way to this podcast, there's some illuminated part of your mind that recognizes that you are more than this, but you have been indoctrinated into a corporate mentality that is impoverished. It is impoverishing you from accessing a greater purpose and a greater meaning. And you're wasting your life from a Buddhist point of view. This is a waste, a very sad predicament, a waste of a life. So not only in the first leg of the journey do you reclaim your humanity by understanding that because you have mind and consciousness is not parsed, is not contained within one lifetime, and that the things we say, think, and do in this lifetime are actually setting up a future life, and that life is a continuum that has no beginning and no end. It's infinite, truly infinite. And to reclaim mastery of your evolution, that's the game. That's the game. Don't waste your time, illuminate your qualities, and maximize your inner resources. Instead of having to grasp out there, there's abundance here that could feed you. But then we were talking about the bodhisattva, which is then to recognize, shit, look at everybody. How sad a predicament. Everybody's like frenetically trying to buy on Amazon on their little phone, and yet they go home so depressed that they're popping Prozac and like sleeping pills and like pornifying themselves, trying to grab the next like orgasm, right? It's a really sad condition. So the Bodhisattva says, well, I found a little internal peace and I see the open nature of reality, but I'm not going to forget my brothers and sisters who are sleepwalking through life and having a nightmare and believing their nightmare.
Right.
Believing their nightmare. So I'm committed to them. I'm going to make myself available with my embodiment so that those that are interested can come forward and learn what they are really about. And once you do that, once you make your commitment to stay amongst people and to offer what you can, it might immediately be resources. I'll give them a podcast. I'll give them a winter coat. I'll give them a warm meal in the winter. Then it might graduate. I'll give you a place, a shelter. You know, if you're in a dire situation, you come into my house, or you come into my circle, or you come into my therapy office, or you come into my coaching practice. But the highest gift that we can give is the teachings on who you really are, that you're a powerful being. You are migrating through consciousness. You are being driven by instincts. You can override those instincts. You can maximize potentials of love and compassion. You are an amazing, supreme human being. And once you arrive there with that recognition, then finally you can have purpose. What is the purpose of your life? Is to help everybody actualize their nature. And God damn it, what a relief that is to finally discover that. Because think about what has been motivating you for 10, 20, 30 years of your life as a central axis mundi of your orientation, of your thrust in life, has been self-serving. It has been all self-serving. It's enough for me to cry like I am included in this. The waking hours of our life are really secretly or overtly about us. And that's why we're not happy. And when you discover that you can be happy, and the way that you do that is to erode your core orientation, your axis around the meanness, and you start celebrating that you're my brother. Even though I just met you, you are my brother, you are my sister. We are in this together. We are in a lifeboat floating through evolution together, and it's got several punctures. And our purpose is to save each other and to help each other realize we're safe and we are home and we have everything we need. And that doesn't mean like you've got to stop being a stylist or stop putting out your podcast, or I have to stop being a therapist. No, it means inhabiting those roles driven by a new agenda. Because you can be a therapist going, look how good I am with my clients, or look how much money I made, or look at like I made it onto Luke's podcast, or whatever, right? You can do that, and it looks like you're being connected and collaborative, but really it's still the same orientation is still operating. The me program is still operating. But when you get to this radical altruism, it's like a new setting that provides so much relief because it reshapes life as you know it. It reshapes life as you know it. I was just in India with my teacher, and we have a ceremony. And after several weeks of teachings, we had a bodhisattva ceremony, which is the vow or commitment ceremony at a holy shrine with a great master, that people adopt certain principles and certain guidelines about how they're going to live the rest of their life as someone who is interested in turning their heart inside out to live for others. And I will never forget it as long as I live. Geshe Tenzin Zopa told everybody, for countless lives your soul has been lost, and today your soul's purpose has been actualized. It's not at some distant future where you're going to fulfill your purpose. Like we're longingly climbing up the mountain and we'll get to the summit one day. You have actualized your life's purpose. You have already actualized it by taking this vow to commit the rest of your life to live inside out for the benefit of others. You have finally actualized your life's purpose. And I was just blown away. I was blown away. And that doesn't mean all 32 students come home and they give up their jobs and they wear loincloths and they start doing mantras. And, it doesn't mean that. It means like half of them were therapists. Boom! Suddenly bodhisattva therapists have infiltrated their offices with love and compassion. Some of them are CEOs and executives in the leadership and finance field. Boom! Suddenly a bodhisattva's infiltrating finance. Some of them are school teachers. Boom! Suddenly a bodhisattva's infiltrating the educational system. And their presence, their mentality, is reversing the narcissistic paradigm and the agenda of capitalism and production that is making us so sick and disturbed. And that's all they can do, just like you said, that you work within your sphere of influence. But now, finally, you have a meaningful purpose to your life. On the outside, nothing has changed.
Life is art. But before you knew that life is art, life was a nightmare. Life was a nightmare. And then you meet a spiritual tradition that says, no, life is not a nightmare. It feels that way because you haven't been taught how it's an art, how you're part of the creation, how you're part of the creation. You haven't come in contact with a wisdom tradition that has yet alerted you to the fact that you are an artist. You are what I call a life architect. That's how I ended the book, Gradual Awakening. We are life architects. Before anyone taps you on the shoulder with a cup of cappuccino that says, here you go, you're a life architect, life had moments of buoyancy and sunlight and sun rays and moments of love, but mostly they ended in despair, and we were like clawing and pawing our way through life. And then, and only then, did we come into contact, not by any coincidence, but by sheer virtue, through the great spectrum or the prism of quantum reality and interconnectivity and causality. We find our way to some tradition that alerts us to the fact that we are creators. Then you make the next jump from the lily pad and you get to not only are you a creator, but life can be much more fluid and it can be much more relaxed. And it can be much more playful, and it can be much more delightful, not in a temporary way. So then this is the next lily pad is there is no mountain. Okay, what the hell does that mean? Well, every spiritual culture, whether you have a ceremony, a plant ceremony, or you dissolve in emptiness, you look with the critical faculty of reason, you do a meditative deconstruction, you do a plant medicine ceremony. All roads lead to Rome spiritually. And what does that mean is what we are seeing, i.e. the Monopoly game, isn't actually how it is in ultimate reality. Things don't exist the way they appear. And by whatever means you go down the rabbit hole, we all find that the waves at the surface that appear to be discrete at the depths of the ocean is really just one thing. We are one. You can't really discriminate whether you take a quantum point of view between wave and particle, whether you take the emptiness versus form dichotomy that's part of the Zen tradition or the Mahayana tradition. I'm sure there's one in the shamanic systems as well. From the ultimate point of view, it's all one. However, there's another final movement, Mike. There's another final movement. We can't just hang out in the oneness. We can't just hang out in the oneness. We can't hang out in the 6-hour plant ceremony. We can't hang out in what's called the samadhi of the infinite space-like equipoise. That's what it's called in Buddhism. The samadhi, the concentration of the flow on the space-like nature of things. We can't hang out on the void. We must come back to duality. We must come back to the mountain. We must come back to the separation. We must come back to the black and white. We must come back to the us and them. We must come back to the world of forms. But hopefully, having seen something very deeply and reorganized our gut level intuition or our core level program, having seen that there is no mountain, we return to the world of forms. We return to see there is a mountain. But now we are engaging with the mountain differently than when we first saw it. That second mountain is now being seen from the creative side of life, from the play side of life, from life as an art. From life as an art. Now we may still go for justice, okay? We still need to balance out the chaos. We still need to find better leaders. We still need to empower downtrodden members of our global family. We still need to create laws. We still need to improve our education. We still need to improve the standard of living across the planet. We still need to create equity and justice and fairness. We still do that. But how we do it, matters, Michael. How we do it matters. Are we going to thrust our fists against our chest and brandishing knives and axes? Are we going to counter violence with violence? Are we going to counter prejudice with prejudice? Are we going to counter ignorance with more ignorance? Or are we going to bring the wisdom eye of seeing the deep nature of reality to bear in our fractal, conventional, relational reality? That is the expression of non-dualism. That's where I think the real potency of bringing a spiritual remedy into life, that's where it is really, that's where the opportunity is. My higher consciousness has discovered it's not about the numbers, it's about value. It's not about the endpoint, it's about the journey. It's not about the praise or blame, it's about the flow. I know that, and yet my conditioning, my culture, the social media ramp up, my instincts, they're telling me one thing, and my higher soul is telling me another. So I still get caught. But the point of this utterance to me is to remind you and I that we're not about to abandon our post and head for the Himalaya, for the hermitage. Life is our yoga. In the struggle with the shadow, in the resurgence or the reemergence of shadow content, it doesn't have to be a game of life and death. It doesn't have to be a game of life and death. It doesn't have to be a game of praise and blame. It doesn't have to be a game of sheer survival. It doesn't have to be a game of gain and loss. It doesn't have to be monopoly. It can just be the play of delight. How the fuck do you get there? How do you get there?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Mindfulness in the context of Buddhism is both a conventional approach, but it is also an ultimate approach. An ultimate approach to what? Well, it's a technology to steer evolution. It's not just about one life. It's about countless lives and about using mindfulness awareness to leverage choices along the long arc trajectory of a soul's evolution towards enlightenment. And if you don't like the word soul there, and that doesn't even fit in the rubric of Buddhism, then you can use consciousness. You're steering consciousness rather than letting consciousness be driven by imprints and instincts from past lives. You are intervening with enough consciousness to leverage it like a crowbar along a new pathway so that it reinforces greater love and compassion, not just for this life, but in countless ensuing lives. So there, I would say that It is a direct challenge to the nihilistic, materialistic, capitalistic frameworks that underlie most of modern culture. And so I think this is why you've seen that they've extracted it, because you can't have both. But this is why I try to retain it, because I think we need to challenge all of those paradigms right now. I think the paradigm at large has a large part to do with why we're so sick as a society. And just to be clear for people listening, we are the only culture, modern civilization, that believes that there's only one life to live. Every culture since the beginning of dawn has understood this principle, that it's not one life to live, that we are evolutionary beings. Everybody's understood that. The furthest extent that we understand that now is that our offspring, we should be responsible for what we do in this life. We should get a inheritance package together. We should make legal documents for our offspring. We should, leave some money behind for them, because there is some sort of understanding that what we do in this life carries over. But it's very, very limited. But every single culture knew this before the scientific revolution. And the destruction of our spiritual tethers to the spiritual world. Everybody understood that we were infinite, and there was quantum understanding before there was quantum science.
That's true.
It was an understanding of multiple dimensions, and that you were far more than just your matter. And when matter dissolved, consciousness is indestructible, and that consciousness infused everything. And so yes, there was this great connection to something beyond us, knowing that we were still part of that beyond, just not in this form. And so when you're plowing away and chiseling away at a great thing, yes, it's true, you might not see the end of it, but you also had an underlying connection to a greater cause and a greater community and that brought you tremendous satisfaction. Whereas now people think, we've got to get ours now. It's so self-indulgent, so self-absorbed, so self-centered, and so myopic that this is a hard sell. This is a really hard, difficult thing to push back on. But in another way, if you don't take it from me, just start looking at some of the great cultures, ancient wisdom traditions, and they all point to this phenomenon. They all point to the fact that part of your waking up is your recognition, your connection of your place in the cosmos, or the God within, whatever language you want to put in it, that there's a connection between you now and evolution. You never die, in other words. Some part of you is deathless. All traditions, the alchemical traditions, the Kabbalah, the Sufis, all the mystical traditions say there's the state of deathlessness that we can achieve through our mystical practice. So they're all pointing to this reality.
Nothing that sticks happens quickly. You have to put the fucking work in. You have to commit for a very long time. It's not an easy. Finding yourself is not an easy thing. Fuck anyone who tells you that it is. It's not. It's meant to kill you. You have to die. You were born to be in this orchestra, and you're trying to fit in. And God bless them, but those people that have really found their way to fit in, they're the ones that are most lost. It's the people that go listen to their intuition and go, I don't belong here. This is not where I belong. Let me start listening to something inside of me. That thing takes you off out of the orchestra for a little while, and temporarily you are lost, and you're afraid, and you're no longer, and you're a social creature, and so you want to be amongst others, but you start to prioritize this inner calling or conviction that you don't quite know exactly what it is, and then you start following it, but for a period there, and maybe you circle back and deepen it and deepen and deepen it, so you're always constantly coming up against being lost, but you grow more and more competent at being lost. But that initial being lost, that's a real killer. And it's supposed to be a fucking killer. It's supposed to tear you down. And you know why? Because, and you know this, Eric, and I'm sure this is actually part of your training program. I imagine it is. Every world culture has had a rites of passage except for ours. Love your beat. Just play your fucking beat. Find what your beat is. Don't worry about this one or that one. Don't worry about what the rhythm of your culture is, what the rhythm of your society is, what the rhythm of your family system is. Don't worry about all those things. Yes, you have to go to school. Yes, you have to learn how to play your rudiments. Yes, you have to go play chords. But at a certain point, after you've been indoctrinated into how to play, then fucking find your beat. That's your purpose. Find your beat and love your beat. Not only find it, but love it, play it. Don't let anyone drown you out.
I love you.
I love you too. I love giving you a big psychic hug for you and all you do and all your courage and your humility and your fearlessness and your power and your conviction. I love you, and I wish all blessings in this death process, in this liminal stage, in this birthing process that is confusing us and rocking us and sending us to the floor and back again. And we will all be okay. There is the light at the end of the tunnel. So those of you listening right now that have just been utterly spent and battered by the death process, you will rise again, but you will never rise again in your former iteration. If you lost a business during the pandemic, you must let it go generously and vigorously and wholeheartedly. If you lost a relationship, walk away from it totally. If you were kicking a habit, let go of it entirely. Let go now of your former self. In addition to that, find your tribe and start harnessing the sacred wisdom, magic, whatever it might be. This is the time to plant seeds. And very soon there will be harvest.